Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us right on time today. Thank you for those who were here early and in the waiting room. We appreciate you joining us for this town hall, our first of 2022. And we appreciate all of you who are our members, who are just community members who heard and learned of the town hall and wanted to join to hear from our presenters and to also have your voice heard today. Just a couple housekeeping items we want folks to be aware of. We are recording today's session with the permission of our presenters. It is likely that we will be able to share this recording on our branch's YouTube page later once we have reviewed it and made sure that all has gone as we expected. You know how technology can be at times. So we ask for your patience while we sift through that and make sure that process will work correctly for us. If there are any media persons in the room or any other folks, we ask that you do not create your own recording. We would like to ensure that we've had consent from all of our guests and that everyone knows who has access to the information that is being shared today. And so for that reason, we ask that no other recordings take place other than the one that you can see and consent to when you enter the Zoom room today. If you have just joined us, we thank you for joining us. This is the 2022 Town Hall for the Chapel Hill-Carrboro NAACP. My name is Donna Jones, and I have the pleasure of being the president of our Chapel Hill-Carrboro branch. If you are just joining us, just a quick reminder, we are asking that no recordings other than the recording that we are using via Zoom here today take place. So we ask that you not record audio or video of today's session. We want to respect the privacy and make sure that we have consent of all of our speakers, including the community members who may use the raise hand feature to be addressed today. Few other housekeeping things. We have several of our community leaders and administrators here to speak on behalf of their particular areas today. And then we will have plenty of time for our community members to ask questions of our leaders and spend some time asking questions of our branch leaders as well if you see fit. We will do that in a moderated format using the raise hand feature and the chat feature. And so if you are not yet familiar with how to access those, we know that Zoom changes the area of where you can find the raise hand feature every time you update it. And so right now, at least on my screen, and I'm using a Mac, when I click the reactions button is where I find the raise hand feature. You can also usually find it under the participants section and using the raise hand button there. So I would suggest now that you find on your device where the raise hand feature is so that you will be able to be addressed when you have a question of our presenters or our branch members when we come to that time. We ask that no one unmute themselves before being addressed and asked to unmute, and that we give our presenters their full time to present their information and only get to questions when we announce that we are at that period of time. Again, I want to thank you for being here today. We are really excited to hear from our leaders of our community, but more importantly, we are at such a pivotal time in our community where we really need to know where we're going. We need to understand what our goals are from our leaders, but more importantly, they need to understand what our goals are for our own community. And so we are happy and appreciative of those who were able to join us today, and we are going to hear from them and share information with them as well. I want to just start us off with a brief clip before we get started, and then we will go into presentations.
Afternoon, the other America. And I use this subject because there are literally two Americas. One America is beautiful for situation. And in a sense, this America is overflowing with the milk of prosperity and the honey of opportunity. This America is the habitat of millions of people who have food and material necessities for their bodies, culture and education for their minds, freedom and human dignity for their spirits. In this America, millions of people experience every day the opportunity of having life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness in all of their dimensions. And in this America, millions of young people grow up in the sunlight of opportunity. But tragically and unfortunately, there is another America. And this other America has a daily ugliness about it that constantly transforms the buoyancy of hope into the fatigue of despair. In this America, millions of work-starved men walk the streets daily in search for jobs that do not exist. In this America, millions of people find themselves living in rat-infested, vermin-filled slums. In this America, people are poor by the millions. They find themselves perishing on a lonely island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity. In a sense, the greatest tragedy of this other America is what it does to little children. Little children in this other America are forced to grow up with clouds of inferiority forming every day in their little mental sky. As we look at this other America, we see it as an arena of blasted hopes and shattered dreams. Many people of various backgrounds live in this other America. Some are Mexican Americans, some are Puerto Ricans, some are Indians, some happen to be from other groups. Millions of them are Appalachian whites. Probably the largest group in this other America in proportion to its size in the population is the American Negro. The American Negro finds himself living in a triple ghetto, a ghetto of race, a ghetto of poverty, a ghetto is to deal with this problem of the two Americas. We are seeking to make America one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
When I thought about how I wanted to open up our town hall today, and coming off of MLK week, I thought that was timely and important. Also, as I considered how we lost a community member just a couple weeks ago who passed away in the cold, a person who was unhoused. I think about the privilege it is to live in this community, being a Chapel Hill resident, and recognizing that there are two Chapel Hills, there are two Carrboros. There is the one of privilege that many of us share, where we have no concerns or very little concern about how we will pay our bills, whether or not our housing is affordable to us, how we will put food on the table, and how we will ensure that our children have the education that we think that they should have. And then there is another group of us who is struggling to consider where they will sleep tonight in this 27-degree weather. There is a group of us who has children in our very privileged and high functioning school district, and still they are struggling in a way that is significantly different than their peers. We have members of our community who are being forced out because they cannot afford their rent, they cannot afford to live in the community that they work in, or they are barely getting by, barely putting food on the table. And I recognize that as we consider the work that we do here together, not only today, but every day, that we must recognize that even though we consider ourselves a blue town in a red state, we have so much work to do. Our democracy is under attack at every turn, and our neighbors are struggling. And we really have to spend some time reflecting on what our responsibility is to one another. And so I wanted to start us off in that sentiment to ensure that we understand why we are here today and the work that we must do as we move forward in 2022. In 2020, we came together, we were in the streets. We saw folks doing the work that we had never seen before. And unfortunately, we did not see them again in 2021. And so I just want to remind you that we appreciate those of you who are new and joining us for the first time today. But please do not let today be your last. Please figure out a way for you to become a part of the solution to the many, many challenges that our community is not immune to. And with that, I will get us started with our first speaker. And so I'm gonna just for 1 second change our view so that I can make sure I know who all is here. And I believe we have Aimy Steele or a member of the New North Carolina Project to start us off today. Oh, I see you there, Dr. Steele. If you are ready, I'm gonna give you the floor. And I appreciate you so much for being here today. I know you have a lot on your plate and you are doing the good work for us all as we fight this fight coming up politically. And so I'm gonna go ahead and give you the screen. So thank you for being here.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Donna. And thank you to everyone. I do apologize. I am mobile today, and I shared that with leaders, and they said, we'll forgive you for being mobile. Just if you can come. So I wanted to let you know that I'm committed to this work. I want to say thank you to my amazing team, some of whom are on the call. I know I saw Kristen Hamlett and possibly Lakeisha K. Brown and others. Thank you again for being here. I want to start by just saying the New North Carolina Project exists to make sure we see better turnout in the Black and Brown communities of North Carolina. What that means is we are going into the communities. We've started doing that back in December, and we are going into communities, talking with people door to door, on the phones, by text, and through community events to ensure they have access to all of the things they need in order to make an informed decision of whether or not to vote. Now, we don't take it for granted that we come in with the solution. We are coming in from a perspective of learning from the community about, things that are important to them, things they need, and then devising a plan with them of how we can help and how we can be of support. The great Jonah Garson, who's also on this call, once said to me, we should be focused on making sure constituency-based services exist within communities, particularly communities of color. It makes no sense that we can have communities who say, all I need help with is this one thing. And if we can gain trust with that community by helping them through that one thing or that one situation, what we will find is that we will develop an allyship, which can then turn into electoral organizing. We exist to organize and help organize communities so that we can flip to electoral organizing, which will encourage people to vote in every single election. So I stand here before you, letting you know that we are a partner. We are more than happy to continue the work in the field that we are doing, and we are not stopping. Our goal is to knock 250,000 doors this year, make 1 million phone calls and 1 million text messages to individuals, not multiple times to the same person. So be very clear, we know what our goals are and what our intentions are. And that's where we feel that we will have the most impact in communities of color, particularly in the Black community. As a former candidate, former Spanish teacher, and former K-12 school principal, I can tell you that building relationships in communities is how you move the needle. If you're not in the communities, then you can't really help them as much as you might think you can, because trust in communities of color is established by longevity, by building relationships, and by just showing up when you say you're going to show up and helping in that constituency-based service space I mentioned earlier. So I'm honored to be here. I thank you, Donna, for your leadership and the incredible board you have with the NAACP, and we stand ready to help and support in any way possible. So please find our information attached. I want to say thank you to the Councilwoman of Carrboro, Councilwoman Barbara Fouchee, for your amazing leadership and all of the wonderful things you're doing to build up infrastructure in Carrboro so that the residents, all residents, know that the two Carboroughs can be unified, as Dr. King said. So thank you all, and I'll take any questions you have, or we can reserve those until later. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Steele. We appreciate the work that you are doing and the work that is going to be done. And we know that it is a lot of work to do. I know that you are mobile today. So our format is going to be to have our presenters share information, write down your questions, and then we'll get to questions at the end. But because Dr. Steele is mobile, I want to give people an opportunity. I know some of her team are here as well. So if you have pertinent questions, burning questions for Dr. Steele, go ahead and use the raise hand feature right now. And then once we get to the end of our presentations, the members of her team who can stick along can answer the last of your questions. So if we have any questions right now, please go ahead and use the raise hand feature. Okay, just making sure.
Madam President?
Yes, Debbie. I think that's
Yes.
Debbie.
So thank you so much for your work. Thank you for the outstanding team that is here. I just want to make sure that when I speak of this project that I'm speaking in truth. Is it indeed modeled after what happened in Georgia, that the success there? Just wondering about the framework of the project for North Carolina.
Okay, Deborah, great question. Thank you so much. The answer is yes. I was very inspired by Stacey Abrams and the work that she did. We are not sponsored by the New Georgia Project, just to be clear. But yes, I have met Stacey. She's an amazing person. Yes, I've met with Kendra Cotton, who's the COO of the New Georgia Project. Yes, I did ask and got permission to name this organization the New North Carolina Project out of respect and admonition for the work that had been done prior. But yes, after I finished my run for North Carolina House in 2020, after also having finished a run in 2018 and saw how effective the field was in closing the gap in what was going to be a hard to win election, I recognized that North Carolina needed some infrastructure similar to what we saw in Georgia in post-election analysis that allowed organizations to come together and see, still a field operation in place when we were trying to be as careful as possible and not go to doors and not do the normal field work that we were accustomed to doing in our campaign, particularly. When we saw the infrastructure in Georgia amplify the voices, especially in communities of color, but particularly in Black communities, I was, again, very motivated and very inspired by that work. Now, after the election, I had 16 debriefing meetings in November, met with 35 grassroots leaders in December, and then had 75 meetings from January to March before deciding to start the New North Carolina Project, because I was really done with politics. But ultimately, the perspective and the success of the folks in Georgia and Stacey Abrams led me to still start this organization. To date, we have 13 full-time employees. We've raised just over $2 million, and we are in place to stand up, or we've already stood up our field operation, similar to what they did in Georgia with being on doors, knocking, making phone calls, sending text messages, and also organizing in community events and doing outreach all over the state. So to answer your question in short, Deborah, yes, it is modeled after the New Georgia Project, but we are not sponsored by them. We are a separate entity.
Thank you. All right, we are going to move to our next speaker. And then if you have other questions, feel free to go ahead and drop those in the chat, or you can also, you can also ask them at the end for when we have more time for questions. Okay. I am going to make sure that this is going to speaker view. And Dr. Hamlett, I'm going to give you the floor now.
All right. Thank you, Donna. Thank you, everyone, for welcoming me and allowing me to come present and speak with you this afternoon. As I try to share my screen, I just wanted to say that I have been here for just a little over a year, and I very much feel like a part of the community, and having the opportunity to build those relationships that we just heard about. Let me see if I can get my technology. Let's see. All right, can you all see the presentation?
We see the website.
The website. All right. Sorry about that. All right, I may have to do it without sharing that. Oh, here we go. All right, does that work?
Yes.
All right, perfect. Thank you for your patience. So again, good afternoon, everyone. I am Nyah Hamlett, Superintendent in Chapel Hill-Carrboro City Schools. I have been here since January 1st of 2021. And as I was saying before, I feel very much part of the Chapel Hill-Carrboro community and family, and excited to be here with you today. So I just wanted to take a few moments to share some information with you about our priorities and some general priorities and accomplishments from the past year, share a little bit about some of the key issues that we're continuing to face here in our district, and then share just a little bit about kind of next steps in our plan and our goal for 2022. So in 2021, as I came in, one of the first things that I said is that I wanted to really take some time to laugh out loud, or listen, observe, and learn as part of building those relationships and getting embedded into the community, and really trying to assess, where our school district is and what the needs are of our students and our employees and our broader community. I took a lot of time to do that listening, observing, and learning, and I am continuing to do that. Another thing that was a priority and I've seen some growth in is that we have really been able to establish a cultural norm of collaboration, certainly transparency, and trying to really build coherence and trust within the organization, but also with our community members and families. Another priority for the past year, and it's something that we continue to focus on, is really amplifying the voices of our students and our principals in decision making. When I came in, I heard a lot from teachers, I heard a lot from community members, certainly in close communication with our school board, and I felt like there were some opportunities to really amplify the voices of the students that we serve, and certainly the principals and instructional leaders in our buildings. And then, of course, not just because we're in a pandemic, but because I am and forever will be a proponent of wellness and school-based mental health and social emotional learning. We have prioritized wellness as a school district, and really looking for opportunities to expand our services and our supports in those areas. So some of the key issues that we're facing, I tried to put them kind of all in one with some of the issues, but also some of the things that we're really focused on to try to push past and push through some of those issues. So I just recently had the opportunity to participate in an interview for a documentary that's being done on the Leandro case. And one of the things that I said is that in Chapel Hill-Carrboro City Schools, we really are trying to push past or go beyond the sound basic education that is part of that Leandro plan. Sound basic is just baseline. That's just the beginning. That's just, to me, that's minimal. And in Chapel Hill-Carrboro City Schools, our students deserve more. Our students deserve a high quality, affirming learning environment and experiences that go beyond just sound basic education. So of course, we're pushing toward that, but doing that in the midst of a continued and ongoing pandemic, between making decisions based on, our COVID positive cases and layered mitigation strategies and all of the challenges that come along with trying to educate children in a pandemic. We are trying our best to push past that, to push through that and go beyond just the basics. We also had the opportunity to combine our equity department and our family and community engagement department, led by Dr. Rodney Trice, who is actually on the call. So I do want to recognize him, and hopefully if there are some questions at the end, he and I can share that opportunity to answer any questions that you may have. But we have merged our departments of equity and family and community engagement because we really want to be intentional about, number one, not just talking about equity, actually walking the talk and seeing equity in action. And then also making sure that we are engaging and going to and being with the communities that tend to be historically and traditionally marginalized. So we thought it important to really put those two departments together to create a concerted effort to really serve our most vulnerable populations. Another area that we're working through and some issues that we're continuing to face is really to make sure that we are making decisions based on the data that is before us. And I'm not just talking about the numbers. I'm not just talking about test scores. Just as a small example, we are in the process of hiring a principal for East Chapel Hill High School. So last week, a couple of my team members and I spent 2 full days at East Chapel Hill High School, meeting with student groups and meeting with employees to sit down with them and hear from them as to what they want to see in their next principal and what challenges they currently face. So we are making decisions based on both quantitative and qualitative data that we get from really, again, with who matters most, our students. And then also looking at how we use that data to allocate resources to our schools and to our students and student groups who need it most. Social emotional learning and mental wellness is a continued area of concern, as well as an area that we will forever be champions of. Not just because we're in the middle of a pandemic, but because we've also seen an increase in significant and challenging student behaviors. We know that our students and our families and our employees are experiencing trauma like they have never experienced before, and challenges that have been exacerbated by the pandemic, but also things that have been there for quite some time, especially for our Black and Brown children and families and staff. We're also making sure that we are doing our best to be transparent and bring in multiple stakeholder groups when we're looking at our fiscal management and our budget development process. We currently use the racial equity impact assessment pocket guide questions as we develop our budget and get requests from our school principals. And so that's a practice that we put into place last school year because we really feel like it's important to make sure that we're allocating resources in an equitable way, but also that we're using that REIA as a guide to help us make those decisions. And then last, but certainly not least, it should probably be in the middle, we have a charge to make sure that we are doing everything in our power, despite COVID, despite whatever other excuses that folks might want to put out there. Our goal is to close the access, opportunity, and achievement gaps that we know exist, and not just rest on the accolades that we have as a school district, recognizing that we tend to perform pretty well compared to other districts in the state. We have some pretty glaring access, opportunity, and achievement gaps that have to be addressed. And so that's an ongoing issue and challenge for us that we are committed to working through. And then I just wanted to share briefly, Dr. Trice, under his leadership with the Equity and Engagement Department, he's working with multiple groups and getting feedback and kind of socializing this framework here, this equity and engagement framework. I've asked him to really help us as a school district to develop common and shared languages and practices for equity work in CHCCS. When I first came here, I was so excited and continue to be excited that we have a school district, we have a school district community that is very willing to talk about equity and to talk about the inequities that exist. And we just need a little push and some guidance and a framework that we can all operate from to make sure that that equity work lives in our actions and is embedded throughout our core values and is embedded throughout the work that we do every single day. Dr. Trice, I know, is going to be sharing some of this with members of the NAACP and Campaign for Racial Equity. I know he's been working with other groups to get feedback on this framework. So this is a draft, but I'm very pleased with kind of the direction that we're going and really just pulling and pushing along those who need to understand how equity-focused practices and anti-racism and social justice action work together for the greater good. So again, really excited and proud of that work that our equity and engagement team is doing. And then a little more information about our equity and engagement department. We are currently in the process of looking for our next director of family and community engagement. The previous director recently retired. So we're looking at expanding our reach and expanding our services and really, again, capitalizing and maximizing on the opportunities of bringing those two departments together so that we can go into the community, so that we can do what Dr. Steele said and be with people and talking with people and building those relationships, because we recognize that communities of color are the very communities that tend not to trust systems or organizations or school systems when it comes to dealing with these very challenging issues. So we are working toward hiring a director of family and community engagement who can lead those efforts alongside Dr. Trice and his team. We also have some programs and partnerships that are some that are new, some that are being revisioned and revitalized under the leadership of Lori Clark, who I know you all know and love and just as much as we do. And so we're really excited about the work that's being done. I know Ms. Clark actually just led a group earlier today to get some feedback, a student group, to get some feedback on safety for our students and for our school community. And so we're working through the work with the School Safety Task Force, which has been renamed, and we kind of hit the reset button because at one time it was just focused on the SRO program, the School Resource Officer program. So we have re-envisioned and reimagined that task force to focus on school safety overall. And there's a student work group led by Ms. Clark that is doing some great work and providing feedback on what is necessary for students to feel and be safe in their school environment. Some other programs that we're really excited about and we're getting kicked off, the Superintendent Student Equity Ambassadors, where we will have representatives from every middle and high school, again, being led by Lori Clark and Dr. Trice. And I'm just really excited about engaging with those students. We'll be meeting on a monthly basis and really helping them to determine what challenges and what things they want to be able to accomplish in their school communities. And then the Blue Ribbon Mentor Advocate Program, we're in the process of working through a revitalization of that program, again, under Lori's leadership. So we're excited about that work. And then I know that Dr. Trice is also working with community organizations such as the NAACP, as well as the Campaign for Racial Equity and the current leadership of the Equity Advisory Council, so that we can determine kind of what the next steps are, what the work of the EAC will be, and really work alongside the community organizations, recognizing that this is a council of community leadership. So we're excited about what's happening with that group. And then I'll just say, and I know that I can't sum up goals or, a whole year or our vision in one excerpt of a quote, but it's interesting, but also no coincidence that Donna showed the video that she did today, because for us, the path to one CHCCS is really our goal in 2022. We want to make sure that we have high expectations and support in place for students based on their potential, not just based on their circumstances. And this excerpt of a quote is actually from my community update from yesterday, where I just said to our school community that we really need to strive to innovate and create new models in public education and take risks in doing so. But I'm also a firm believer that our children don't have time to wait for us to get it right. So we're going to move our district forward with empathy. We're going to move our district forward with grit, but we're also going to do it with a sense of urgency in service to our children, because we know right now, as Donna said, there's very much two CHCCSs. There's the CHCCS for students of privilege and students who come from different backgrounds who are performing seemingly well, right? But we also know, as I said earlier, we have some pretty glaring gaps that we have to work through to make sure that we're working toward that path to one CHCCS and close those gaps. So I'm gonna try to stop sharing my screen so that I can see your faces, and happy to answer any questions. Or Donna, are we doing that at the end, or?
It looks like we have someone with a burning question already, so let's just go ahead and do that. Mayor Stiles, we're so happy to have you with us, and it's so exciting to get to call you that for the first time in a branch meeting. So welcome, and please feel free to ask your question.
Thank you, Donna. That's very kind. Dr. Hamlett, it's always a joy to hear you speak, and a real learning experience every single time. And primarily because you have this way of tying your personal and professional values around equity and engagement to the daily experiences of people in your school system in the district. And I just really appreciate your skill in being able to do that. I'm hoping you could say just a few words about the strategic planning process that you've undertaken with the district recently, and the committee you've pulled together to make that happen, and the consulting group that you've pulled in to facilitate. Can you connect that work that's just been launched in the last few weeks to what you've just been talking about around equity engagement?
Absolutely, and thank you for that question. So we just kicked off our steering committee for our strategic plan. So the current strategic plan actually expired in 2021, at the end of 2021. But we recognize that this is a great opportunity to really reimagine what we want to see for CHCCS as a school district community. And so the steering committee's work just kicked off a couple of weeks ago. There's about 47 members of that steering committee from multiple representation from schools, as well as community organizations and families. We are partnering with Insight Education Group, who is a group that has done strategic planning work with school districts across the country. So we are really pleased with the work that they're doing and that they're going to guide us through. And then Dr. Trice, as well as our Chief of Staff and School Leadership, Brandy Reeves, are also heading up additional opportunities for community stakeholders, as well as students and staff, to provide input into not just our core values and our mission and vision, but also the strategic actions that will be part of our strategic planning process. So There will be community stakeholder engagement groups. There will be focus groups specific to affinity groups, but there will also be some broader focus groups as well. So we're looking forward to what's going to come out of that. And I am really excited because one of the things that I tell our staff all the time is that vision is on us. It's not Dr. Hamlett's vision. It's not just the school board's vision. It's our collective vision. And that's how you really build collective efficacy to make sure that you live out those strategic actions. So we are pleased and excited, and the board will be part of that process, certainly, and helping to guide us as well. And we hope to be able to bring the strategic plan to our board for final approval at the end of June.
Thank you for that. And thank you so much for being here with us. And like I said, we will have plenty of time for questions today. So we feel free to write those down if you have additional burning questions that we don't get to right away. We are going to move on to our next speaker, which is our Chapel Hill Town Manager, Maurice Jones.
Good afternoon, Donna. Thank you, and welcome everyone. Thank you for having me here at the town hall meeting today. I'm also going to share my screen. Can you see that?
Yes.
One second. One second, I'm sorry, I'm having some issues with advancing it. I'm sorry about that. But thank you all once again for allowing me to come and speak with you today. Just wanted to walk you through some of the town's goals and objectives aligned with the issues that the NAACP asked me to speak about today, including affordable housing, including the environmental stewardship, and then also including economic and financial stewardship as well here in the town of Chapel Hill. I'll get started with environmental stewardship. This is one of the critical goals of our town. It is one of the goals that the council set forth for us when we were putting forth our strategic initiatives a couple of years ago. And of course, it's vitally important not only for the town of Chapel Hill, but also for our world at large. And so as part of our environmental stewardship, the council has asked for us to mitigate effects of climate change in a variety of ways. One of the ways that one really important step that we took to try to address that was the development of the town's climate action and response plan. As you can see, our climate action and response plan was developed over a 2-year period of time and really focused on the best ways that we as an organization, and then also working with partners in the community as a community, could address the important issues to reduce carbon footprint in our society, and then also find different ways to mitigate issues like flooding, in our community as well, which we've done with the development of and the creation of parks like the Booker Creek Basin Park, which is located right behind the Elliott apartment complex off of Fordham Boulevard. That was created to help mitigate flooding in that area all the way down to Estes Drive. And from what we've seen so far with the results of that, it's worked out exceptionally well. We've also taken some steps to address coal ash remediation at the police department site off of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. That is an ongoing discussion that we're having right now about the future of that site, which will include, we believe at this point, will include a municipal services center that will help house our police department and several other departments, but then also will probably form a partnership with a private developer to mitigate the coal ash that's located on that site in the future as well. We did take some steps last year to begin mitigating the coal ash there to protect the trail along Booker Creek and then also Booker Creek itself. So we've taken some really important steps to address environmental stewardship here in recent years. What does the future hold? One of the things that we'd like to accomplish is to identify ways for folks to save on their energy, to reduce the carbon footprint, but also save money, and then also provide energy upgrades for our public housing as well. We're taking important steps to do that in the next year. We have installed and will continue to install new electric vehicle charging stations throughout the town of Chapel Hill and to work with partners to find more opportunities to do that. And then we have purchased 3 electric buses that have hit the road here in Chapel Hill. We are looking to purchase 7 more buses in the future as well to help with our transit department. Another really important part of what we'd like to focus on in the future is our economic and financial sustainability, to steward our public assets and to support increasing the economy here so that we have more opportunities for entrepreneurship and job creation here in Chapel Hill. We have been working to attract new companies like Well Inc. and Wegmans and others to bring well-paying jobs into our community. We have also worked closely with Grubb Properties to develop a new parking deck, which is much needed in our downtown on East Rosemary Street, in addition to supporting redevelopment of new office space in downtown, which will create 800 new jobs, which will have, we believe, a ripple effect in our downtown and strengthen our downtown to create more small business opportunities and create more jobs in downtown as well. We have also worked to provide small business grants during COVID, and as we're recovering, our economy continues to try to recover from COVID through our Revive program. The town council set aside a significant amount of money to help support groups to get our businesses going. We had 85 applications for those small business grants. 70% of those were women-owned businesses, 46% were businesses owned by African Americans and other people of color. And so we've taken some really important steps to provide some business grants to help bring our businesses back to where they were prior to the pandemic and help new businesses get started as we're coming out of the COVID pandemic, hopefully soon. And then we're also focusing on other business and workforce development opportunities to create new opportunities to provide support for folks of color and women who are focused on creating new businesses in our downtown. And then also to help provide some workforce development opportunities for folks to gain new skills, to give them better opportunities at stronger jobs with better paying jobs with benefits as well, including an apprentice program that we are supporting that will be starting in the summer of this year. Affordable housing, we have focused a lot on affordable housing over the course of the last few years. We are committed to increasing housing across a range of incomes and to strive for more equitable outcomes, especially in historically underserved populations. We've seen great movement in that in the last year. We look forward to what's going to be going on in the next year or so. As you all may recall, a couple of years ago, the town passed a $10 million affordable housing bond. $5 million of that has been allocated. Another $5 million will be allocated this year. We have a significant project at 2200 Homestead, which will bring in well over 100 new units of affordable housing in our town. We are working with community partners to make that project happen. We have the J Street project, which is moving forward right now through the entitlement process. That, along with the Trinity Court renovation project, the rebuilding of Trinity Court, will create another 100 plus new affordable housing units or affordable housing units here in Chapel Hill. We've also focused on Bennett Road. That is early stages of developing a project there. All four of those projects are town-owned land, and that was a decision the council made several years ago to dedicate town-owned land to help try to chip away at the affordable housing needs that we have here in our community. And we've also been working to encourage private development of affordable housing here as well. Most of the projects that come before council are seeking rezoning. And as part of those discussions, the council is focused on ways that we can encourage those private developers to create affordable housing to address the issues that we have here. We also think that an important part of what we're trying to accomplish can't happen unless we have a safe community, community where people feel safe. And so we have spent a significant amount of time over the course of the last couple of years focused on how we can make our community safer and more equitable. The town council several years ago created a criminal justice debt fund to help provide support for folks who had made mistakes in their lives, had paid their debts to society, and were really struggling financially because of fines and fees that had been leveled on them as they went through the criminal justice system. And so we've set up a fund to provide assistance to folks to help them get back on their feet. Last year, in the wake of the George Floyd, 2 years ago, in the wake of George Floyd's murder, the council passed a resolution to take several steps to address inequities in our community and to help make Chapel Hill a safer place to live and to help us reimagine our community safety. One of the things that the council called for was the end of regulatory stops. Those stops on many occasions have led to arrest of folks, have led to detentions, and have led, unfortunately, on too many occasions, have led to people being injured or killed in our country. And so we took that immediate step to end those regulatory stops, and it's had a significant impact on the number of interactions between the police and folks who are out in the community. And so we think that has been a really important first step in trying to address some of the equity issues and to help lead to de-escalation efforts between police officers and law enforcement and folks of color in our community. We hired our town's first diversity, equity, and inclusion officer, Shanika Weeks, who's been doing an outstanding job helping with training within our organization, also helping to identify opportunities in the community where we could strengthen relationships and address DEI issues. And she's been working to develop a DEI program for us. We also added a crisis counselor to our crisis unit. We've had a crisis unit since the early 1970s to help address issues in our community, to help provide assistance when folks are struggling, and then also to help de-escalate situations involving law enforcement. And a really important step that the council took was to create the Reimagining Community Safety Task Force. This task force began their work in October of 2020. They worked diligently over a period of 8 to 9 months to bring forth some recommendations that the council considered last year. They met with experts in the fields of law enforcement and social justice. They also met with our staff on a regular basis to talk about what we were doing internally. And they did a lot of research and heard from the community, had a number of public forums to hear from the community about their interactions with the police and how they felt we could make Chapel Hill a much more equitable and safe community for all. And so these are just a few of the recommendations that came out of the task force. One recommendation was to help support the street outreach program that Orange County offers. The town council just recently approved the funding to help create a fourth position to help with SORAD, and there'll be ongoing conversations about how to support SORAD in the future. One recommendation was to review the school resource officer program. As Dr. Hamlett mentioned, they have expanded that within the school system, and we are working to provide support about how we can make that type of program safer in the future. We have also, the task force also focused on how we could increase diversion and deflection programs within the town of Chapel Hill and increase mental health support as well. So those are just some of the recommendations. When I'm done with my presentation, I will put a link to the full recommendations from the final report from the task force. But they did an excellent job of coming up with ways that we can move forward together, and we're excited about those recommendations. Of course, COVID has been something that we've had to deal with now for 2 years. I've been exceptionally proud of the way our community has responded to COVID in a lot of ways, supporting efforts to socially distance, masking, becoming vaccinated. And I think we responded really well to that, and our organization did as well, ensuring that we were providing support to those who are most in need. As you can see on the screen there, that's a picture of Faith Brody, who's our Director of Public Housing. Her and her team have been working with community partners and other departments within the town of Chapel Hill to provide food every week as part of a local food bank every week since March of 2020, and in an effort to ensure that people were being fed throughout that period of time. And we have had thousands of people during the last 2 years to help provide to help them get through this very difficult time. In addition, we've provided support through housing assistance as well. Several $1 million have been dedicated to help people get through this process, this economic downturn and the financial struggles that they were going through. And then, of course, we've worked very closely with our partners in Carrboro and Hillsborough in Orange County to help ensure people were tested and encouraging folks to get vaccinated throughout this period of time as well. So how can folks in our community help? We have created a couple of opportunities for folks to be a part of the solution, to give them opportunities, give all of you opportunities to voice your opinions with us and to help guide us as we're moving forward on these really important issues. The People's Academy is an opportunity for folks to learn more about what's going on in our community, not only from a municipal standpoint, but also with nonprofits. We also have a host of boards and commissions that folks can join and be a part of, and there are nonprofits and the faith community as well. And then we've started a new process to gain information and feedback from our community, and we're calling it Let's Talk Down. And there are a whole host of and really important issues that we are trying to engage folks on and work with folks in the community to really get to the heart of what folks would like to see change here in Chapel Hill, and to help guide us in our decision making as we move forward. So we encourage folks to check out Let's Talk Town and to become part of that process. And we're always looking for different ways to engage folks in the community. We have strong partnerships with organizations like the Jackson Center to help with efforts like the Northside Neighborhood Initiative and other ways to hear from folks who are struggling in our community or have very strong opinions about how we should move forward in a much more equitable way to serve all of Chapel Hill. So I thank you for your time today, and I thank you for your interest in what's going on in Chapel Hill, and more importantly, I thank you for your good work that many of you are doing to make Chapel Hill a better place to live for everyone. And I'll take any questions that anyone may have at this point.
All right, thank you so much. I know we have several questions in the chat, and just to be fair, given that we've done this for the last two, if there are burning questions, I'll take one or two if you use the raise hand feature, and then we'll move on to our last few presenters and then ask all the questions that we have. Any questions, just use the raise hand feature for me, please. All right, looks like folks are comfortable saving them to the end. So make sure you write them down or drop them in the chat if you have them, and then we will get back to them as soon as we come back for full questions. Thank you again, Manager Jones. And we are going to move on to our manager of the town of Carrboro, Mr. Richard White.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the invitation to be with you today. Let me share my screen. Again, I appreciate the opportunity to be with you all this afternoon. It was so fitting to hear the address from Dr. King, because it reminded me that that's how my interest in local government really began. I remember reading his biography back in elementary school and realizing that he was in Memphis to support the sanitation workers who were on strike there. And so it was at that point that that my interest in local government began, as I learned about his career and what he had done, and how he had gone to Memphis to help those employees there in local government who were striving for better working conditions. My first day on the job began August 23rd of last year. So I'm basically wrapping up my first 100 days or so on the job here with the town of Carrboro. And as you can imagine, any transition for a manager or a leader is certainly a critical time. But when you add COVID-19, it certainly adds another layer of complication, if you will, to beginning that transition period. And so as I came on board, I realized that there were a number of things already in progress. One is that the town had already mandated all employees be vaccinated, and shortly before I arrived, all employees had returned back to work and within the town. And so my work began trying to figure out what the priorities were and begin to establish those priorities. So that's been the work I've been doing over the first 90 days, 200 days or so here with the town, trying to understand what those priorities are. We've also gone through the election, so we now have a new mayor, and we have a new manager practically, we'll soon have a new town clerk. So we're in a stage of really developing those priorities and determining how the town will move forward. I've listed here a number of initiatives that are before us, and it certainly is not an all-inclusive list, but this just gives you some idea of the things that we're working on that are in our immediate future. I think someone put in the chat a question about how we're addressing the transit drivers, the shortage of drivers. And I think like many local governments, we in Carrboro also are dealing with staffing concerns as well. We're in this period of the great resignation, if you will, and we have a number of vacancies within our government as well that we're working to address. We also have a public works director position that we need to fill, several in our planning department, and we have about 7 vacancies in our police department. So like many governments, we're working through staffing issues and also working on pay and compensation as well, trying to determine how do we best pay our employees in a way that's competitive with the market. As I mentioned, with COVID coming on board, the town is in the midst of a comprehensive plan called Carrboro Connects. And COVID-19 certainly brought about a change in that effort, in that we had to revision how that was going to happen in the midst of a pandemic. But we have that well on the way now and are working toward the adoption of that plan. Like many governments, we're working through the American Rescue Plan Act with funding. We have nearly $6.8 million in funding. And so we're working on how do we best use those funds to address those who are most impacted by the pandemic in our community. We've organized a work group who are looking at that funding and figuring out how best we can spend those dollars to assist our community. This year, we'll also be working on a racial equity plan. The town is a member of GARE, and we have Anita Jones-McNair as our racial equity officer, doing a fine job leading that effort for the town, working with training our staff. We have core teams that are built upon our employees who are working with our departments. For the government, that means we need to look at things like our hiring, how we spend our dollars in terms of purchasing. The town council has a number of advisory boards, and they are very interested in making sure that those boards are open and accessible to our entire community. As a government, we want to make sure that we hear from all voices, and particularly from those who don't typically hear from. So making every effort to make sure that we're hearing from all voices in our community. The town council also has put together a racial equity commission. They've appointed members to that commission. They've adopted a reparations resolution, and they've also implemented a community safety task force that will be up and running this year as well. And as you heard in Chapel Hill, we've also looked at our regulatory stops as well and have worked to reduce those in numbers. So our ultimate goal here is to make sure that we center our service delivery around equity. And so that's going to be the core of our racial equity action plan. We expect to see some changes within our downtown in this upcoming year. The major project coming on board is our 203 project, which will bring a library to Southern Orange County. And that will also be a multi-use building in partnership with the county as well. And we're also working on upgrading our town facilities. In addition to the changes that we plan to see in our downtown, we also are undertaking a parking study as well to make sure that our parking facilities can accommodate our growth in our downtown area. Another goal this year will be the FY23 budget. And the goal for me there will be to help to align the council priorities to our budget to make sure our resources are supporting the priorities that are set forth by our town council. And again, this list is not meant by any ways to be all inclusive, just a number of major initiatives that we have before us here within the town. More specifically, I'll talk about affordable housing. This year, we've worked to streamline our process to help our residents pay rent, mortgage, and utility bills. We've also received $900,000 to the CDBG CV grant, and we've used that funding to assist our Carrboro residents and to help towards eviction and homelessness prevention. And on the map, you can see where those residents that we've assisted where they're located, and you will notice that the bulk of those are along the 54 corridor within Carrboro. Here's an example of some of the affordable housing projects that we have underway. We have the Casa at Perry Place. The groundbreaking took place in April of 2021. This is a low-income housing tax credit project on Merritt Mill Road, and it's serving residents who are earning below the 6% AMI. And this will be 24 units in Carrboro and 24 units in Chapel Hill. We've also used some town-owned land that we have on the north side, and there will be 3 homes built there by Pee Wee Homes. There'll be 3 new units in Carrboro serving residents who are earning below the 30% AMI. And on Cobb Street, we also have a project with Habitat for Humanity. This will serve residents earning below the 60% AMI. This will be 4 new affordable units in Carrboro. Some of our goals for this year is that we anticipate adopting a coordinated manufactured home park strategy for displacement mitigation. And we also will look at using more of our additional town-owned land for development of affordable housing. And we will look at integrate and implementing the comprehensive plan into the town's existing affordable housing goals and strategies. We also are working on environmental justice. And I point out here that I work on historic Rogers Road in that neighborhood. Some of our accomplishments there is that we have undertaken some infrastructure projects with sidewalk construction, and we have sewer infrastructure that's available there to serve the entire neighborhood. The Arena Community Center construction also took place, and we also, the Mapping Our Community's Future document was put together as well, and we're also working on the Green Track in partnership with Chapel Hill and Orange County. Some of the accomplishments of this past year around the environment is that we developed a new townwide stormwater management plan to comply with the EPA and NCDEQ regulatory requirements. We've also been awarded an EPA 319 grant for watershed restoration neighborhoods along the Bowling Creek. And we've initiated a follow-up on the 2020 Rain Ready study. Some of our accomplishments around the environment this past year is that we did some volunteer tree planting through the North Carolina Urban Forest Council grant. We've removed some invasive species and had volunteers from the Carrboro High School football team. We have now town council's appointed a climate action team, which is a new advisory board. We've also awarded grants for 2 new electric vehicle charging stations. We've updated our emissions inventory. We've conducted a community survey we have our community survey results back. We've also have new ordinances for electric vehicle parking spaces and managed natural landscapes. Our goals for 2022 for this year on the stormwater is that we plan to pursue the 319 grant activities, continue our rain ready follow-up. We've also are pursuing a town-wide stormwater infrastructure condition assessment. Our goal here is to try to work to make sure that our community is much more flood resilient. Under the climate action, we are a member of the Tree Cover Protection, Tree USA, and pollinators through the Bee City USA. We're also launching our Green Neighborhoods Grant Program. We're looking at municipal solar and fleet analysis, looking at transportation demand management grants, looking at our energy efficiency revolving loan fund, and we're also reviewing in coordination with OWASA with the water conservation plan. Under economic development, this past year we launched visitcarrboro.com website, which is a tourism-focused website. It provides 5 different weekend itineraries for our visitors, and it's a resource for local events, accommodations, restaurants, and unique places and spaces in our community. We've also granted over $300,000 to small businesses for COVID mitigation assistance. We've assisted 33 businesses, and they could use those funds for repayment of COVID debt, back rent utility payments, for building or equipment upgrades, training or upskilling employees or marketing. And the average grant award was $9,900. We've also launched the online BIPOC New Business Resource Center. It provides a 10-step process to start a business and connects entrepreneurs with planning, marketing, and financial resources. And it gives the access to the town's partner assistance organizations for free one-on-one help and provides additional guidance to entrepreneurs who need household or personal assistance while starting their businesses. Our goals for this year is that we are looking to adopt new policies for the business revolving loan program. We plan to develop a plan and strategy for higher density in our downtown and to implement our Economic Sustainability Commission strategic goals and develop a Carrboro specific tourism strategic plan. And so again, with that, I will say that our work this year is to really move forward on our equity efforts to make sure that we center equity as we work toward the delivery of services within our community. And with that, I'll stop and see if I can answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Manager White. Do we have any burning questions? We have just 2 presenters left. And so if you have a burning question, we'll take it right now, but otherwise we'll move on and then we'll get to questions in the last 30 minutes. Elizabeth?
Yes, thank you. I was just wondering when the Rogers Road Community Center would be open back up. They've had a problem with their heating and no one's even allowed to go in there. And when the county workers have to go in, they go in with hazmat suits. And it's been over 6 weeks since it's been closed. And I'm just wondering if you have an idea when it might open back up.
I don't have an exact date, but I can find that out and see if I can get that back to the group.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Fushi?
Hey, and I thank you, Madam President. I'm not sure who this question is for, even if it is a question, it is at some point, but certainly have heard conversations, and I believe our town council even briefly talked about this last year, the expansion of the Rogers Road Community Center. And I think that that's coming up as a conversation. I know when it was built, I think it was through an interlocal agreement, but certainly it is a county-owned building, and just trying to, and I think what they're trying to figure out over there, they being the staff at the Rogers Road Community Center, is how all that would play out, who would be involved, and just how to start the planning. And so that's something else that I've heard about here recently, and not whoever it's for. It could be for all of us, or it could be just for the county. Thanks. Don't everybody talk at once.
So
Rogers Road.
Donna, I'm sorry.
I hear you, Anna. I just want to make sure folks have an opportunity to answer that question or slash
That's
comment.
what I was gonna respond to.
Okay.
So maintenance is the responsibility of Orange County as well. So we have a request in as of yesterday on the status, and then I think the expansion discussion has also been referred back to the county manager. So I think I was, as commissioner, just made aware of some of these issues yesterday, and we have a request in to make a formal CIP, investment proposal, which there isn't really a formal proposal for expansion yet. So that'll be the first step. And then the building was built with an intergovernmental agreement. And once there is a formal proposal, I'm sure that it'll be something that all three municipalities will be engaged in again. But it's really going in now in a formal way. There has been a lot of discussion about it. So more to come.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Richards. Sometimes I forget that you are Commissioner Richards, and so I appreciate you jumping in your official capacity to help us out today. I am going to move us on to our next speakers, and thank you again, Manager White, and we will have more time for questions for you in just a few. Our next speaker is Dr. Leah Cox from UNC Chapel Hill, and she serves as the Chief Diversity Officer for the university, and we appreciate you also joining us today, and I will give you the floor.
All right, thank you, Donna. Thank you for inviting me. This is really exciting to be a part of this day as we start 2022. I am new to the state of North Carolina and new to Chapel Hill. And so this is really wonderful to see the community engagement with the University of Chapel Hill. So I do not have a slide presentation to show you, but I will talk a little bit about some of the programs and initiatives and things that are happening within my unit, my office, and the university that I think that will engage or has engaged the community in what we do at the university. So Donna, I want to thank you for starting it with the clip of Dr. Martin Luther King, because it's a part of what I said just recently in a meeting with a unit. And what his quote says is, "We must accept finite disappointment, but never lose infinite hope." And so with that, my thought was, I know that there have been struggles, and I'm sure everyone in the town of Chapel Hill and Carrboro have recognized the struggles at UNC. And they recognize some of the struggles around diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, as well as social justice. And so as I've entered in the end of July here at UNC, there were a lot of things that were put on my plate, which I'm hoping as we move through the next year and beyond, because we know that this work takes time. It's not going to be changed in a day. But some of the things that I'm hoping to put in place will begin to move the needle around diversity, especially equity, social justice, inclusion, and belonging at UNC. I've spent the last 5 months just trying to build the office, and we are still working on that. So as I entered with only 2 working staff members, or 3. And so we've lost some folks, but we are now advertising for 4 positions and beginning interviews. We've also made an incredible new hire for a senior director who will be my second in charge, Ms. Patricia Harris, which I think most of you know here in the community and has been a part of NAACP and the Black Caucus. So we're really excited to have Tricia join us, and her leadership is going to be amazing as we continue to build. We are also looking at multiple upcoming programs that have been a part of the UNC community for some time, and a part of Chapel Hill, Carrboro, and the state of North Carolina. One of those is Uplift. And it brings in students from underrepresented students from all across the state to take a look at UNC and to see what we have to offer, and to start to generate that interest in not only UNC, but higher education as a whole. And so that the applications will go out. I know in the last 2 years, what I've been told is due to the pandemic, it has not been in person. So we are hoping that we may be able to have this in person this year, but we're not certain since we have a new variant of COVID rampant across the country. We also have a program called Uplift Plus, and that brings students to our campus for 5 to 6 weeks. They're also able to take classes and get a sense of what it's like to be on a college campus, to be at UNC. What I can say is that program brings in about 90% of those students who attend that program. So what I'm asking the university to do is to expand the program, right? The program now only brings in about 38 each summer. Why not 70 or 80, right? There are more than enough underrepresented students in the state of North Carolina who would benefit from such a program, and hopefully then begin to see them and see us at UNC. I'm also looking to revive a program that disappeared. Don't know why, but I think it's needed. It's one that could be used across the country, but I definitely know it could be used at UNC, and that's the Men of Color program, where we gave support, advice, guidance, and just mentoring to young men of color. And so I'm looking to hopefully get that started this fall and asking for support from the community. I know that there are lots of folks out there who would be willing to work with and support our young men of color who are at UNC. And some of you are alums, some of you are just part of the community who have a hand to offer. We're also looking at starting, and we're going to begin the training next month, is intergroup dialogue. So I recognized as I came in here at UNC that folks don't always have those crucial, difficult dialogues that they should have, not only in their classrooms, but in their department meetings, in their administrative functions across the campus. The folks are afraid to have those conversations, and or if they attempt to have those conversations, they're not skilled enough in facilitating those conversations. And so we're going to be using the Michigan model of intergroup dialogue. They're coming in to do training. Our first round will be with about 25 members of the community to help them learn to facilitate difficult dialogues, to use it in their department meetings, in the classroom, wherever it is that they like to begin to move the needle. And so it's going to grow as we move through the year, but we have to start somewhere. And so I think this is a way to begin to have some of those conversations that aren't happening at UNC. We also have what is called the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Council, and that started probably in 2020, but we've expanded it, and now we've developed some subcommittees that are really going to be looking at some of the issues that we need to attack at UNC. And one of those is the data and metrics around our faculty. We recognize that there's a need to build our diverse faculty in pretty much all of our schools, right? And so how are we going to do that? What does it look like? Where's the desperate impact? And then what do our deans and the chancellor and the provost need to do to begin to make a change? Right. And so it has to start somewhere. So we got to, as we all know, sometimes folks hear our voices, but they don't believe us until they see the data. And so that's a part of my job, is to make sure that there's nobody challenging the data. We see what we see. It is what it is. And let's move forward. So we're going to be working on that. And then lastly, we're going to be making sure that all the members of the community are receiving some sort of diversity, equity, inclusion training. Right, 2 or 3 years ago, the university brought in a consulting firm to do some training. And now what I'm finding as I go from college to college and school to school, that they're asking what next? And also, how do we know what we don't know, right? And so we need to start making sure that folks are touching all parts of the issues around diversity. And so we're going to look at one, making sure that we're starting in each of the schools where they need to start. Some folks are further along than others. Some are new to our institution, but we need to make sure that we're moving this along. And so we're going to be developing that program that hopefully will start somewhere in the fall, with touching every college and every member of our community to talk about these issues, to do some training. It's not one and done. So you can't just take a class and feel like you're skilled in the art of understanding racial justice, trauma, discrimination, harassment, all of those things. We need to make sure that everyone is working towards this. And lastly, we know that there's some issues around hiring, right? And so we will be building out inclusive hiring here at UNC so that every search committee has to go through a training so that we can make sure that those microaggressions, the bias, the discrimination that happens in our hiring processes are at least reduced and hopefully eliminated in the upcoming years so that we can get a more diverse faculty on our campus. So we have a lot of work to do. We have a lot of student programming to build out. We're looking at creating a couple of different programs that haven't existed, but we know that are needed on campus for our students, and then giving support to all of the units across our campus. First, I've got to get a staff, and then we're going to move forward. So I know that we are crunched for time, Donna, and I am happy to take all questions once we're ready to.
Thank you so much, Dr. Cox. We are excited to have you. And I'm going to move us right on to our judges so that we can get into questions very quickly before we wrap up today. So thank you again. And I'm going to move us on to Judge Brown and Judge Pendergrass. If you guys are ready for us, I'm going to turn the spotlight over to the two of you. And Margaret is going to share the screen for you all. Let me just get you both up here. And then we've got two. Okay.
You're muted, Judge Brown.
Okay. Hey, good afternoon, and thank you so much for inviting us and for giving us the opportunity to present this afternoon. And I've learned some stuff and have been taking notes. So thank you to the local branch of the NAACP. So Judge Pendergrass and I are district court judges, and I think I can speak on behalf of the other three that our focus has been, of course, applying justice, but doing it in a fashion such that we understand what the daily pressures of people, what they are experiencing. So one of the great things that's going on is the Criminal Justice Resource Department of Orange County. They have a pretrial services, all 5 of us in district court, because we see people at first appearances when they are first charged with either a misdemeanor or a felony. And when we address the issue of bond, one way we can facilitate people not being in custody and back in the community is to use the resources of the Orange County pretrial services. There is a similar one in Chatham County, but I'll just focus on Orange County. And that group makes evaluations, contacts family members, friends, people in the community for those who are currently charged with a crime to assist them in getting out of jail. We have a new bail policy. We follow the guidelines, and we provided all of those links on our one presentation slide. And we really work hard to evaluate people's personal circumstances and see if we can not have them in the Orange County Jail. The third thing that we do is that the Orange County provides an opportunity and a staff member that helps people obtain their driver's license or recover their driver's license. Many people who come before us lack their driver's license because of fines and costs. And so we're very cognizant when people are before us with regards to that. And we look for ways to ensure that people can recover their license so that they can drive to and from work. And I'll let Judge Pendergrass speak as well.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for having, as Judge Brown mentioned, the two of us. I'll also recognize that our Chief District Court Judge, Samantha Cabe, is also on the call. Judge Sherry Merle is also on the call. The four of us are four of the 5 District Court judges. Judge Todd Roper is not present today, and then our Senior Resident Superior Court Judge, Alan Bedore, is also present on the call today. And we also have our newest judge, Judge Allison Grind out of Superior Court, who's not present. So there's 7 of us in total, 5 of us in District Court. And I think the fact that 5 of the 7 of us are on this call when just 2 of us are presenting is pretty indicative of our bench. We are very collaborative and supportive of one another. And I felt I've benefited very much from the wisdom that's been provided. Specifically to me, I want to talk to a couple things. If I can share my screen as well, I'm going to try. Do I have the ability to do that? Okay, great. All right. See if this works. All right. All right. Can y'all see this? Give me a thumbs up if you can see it.
Yep.
Okay. Good. All right. So what Judge Brown was mentioning is a few things we wanted to hit on. The Criminal Justice Resource Department, what they provide. They are out of they're in Hillsborough. They are funded by us as taxpayers in Orange County, and they are one of the most important pieces of our judicial system. From the work that they do, connecting individuals in our community with resources and allowing us as judges and folks in the court system to understand who we are working with. As Judge Brown said, what every single one of us attempts to do, and I can say it for all of us District Court judges and Superior Court judges, is that we attempt to meet folks where they are when they come in the courtroom and not expect anything out of them. And one of the best tools to figure out how to do that, especially in our pretrial setting when we have first appearances, you'll see this pretrial risk assessment. This is a tool that was created by the Criminal Justice Resource Department. It is a piece of paper that is filled out by, generally by our wonderful Ted Dorsey, who heads up the pretrial team to do this work. And he'll fill this out and then provide this to us. So this is the information generally that we are provided as to what is going on with this individual, what's their record, what are they dealing with, anything information about their income, where they live, their support, if they're working, and any mental health issues or substance abuse issues they're dealing with. They provide us with this tool, which is absolutely key for us to being as efficient as we can with time and as effective as we can with each person that comes before us, because as you know, every single person is different and they deal with different issues when they come before us. The driver's license piece that Judge Brown also mentioned, I have a couple of links that are up here if you can see them, but within the Criminal Justice Resource Department, there is an individual named Emma Ferriola Bruckenstein, who is technically called, she is Restoration Legal Counsel. When we have someone who has been charged out of Orange County or is an Orange County resident with driving while license revoked for what we call a non-impaired revocation, which is anything that deals with court costs or fines that they haven't paid that have suspended them, we'll try to connect them with Emma in hopes that that individual can meet with them, essentially figure out how to clear up their record to get them lawfully driving again. So they're not, whether that's paying costs, figuring out where the money is due. We have many times, as Judge Brown would attest, we'll have folks who come before us and they have no idea why they're suspended. They'll say, I don't know. I think it's from old court costs, but I honestly don't know. Connecting them with Emma is very beneficial to them and to the community. But there's always the folks who say, I don't know why, and I don't live here. And they are out of, they might be out of a different county, or we also preside in Chatham County. There is not a Emma Ferriola Bruckenstein Restoration Legal Counsel there in Chatham. But we do have a different tool that we just learned about, because it's a new tool, where we can send folks to a separate website, and shoot, I don't know if I can, it's up here. There it is. This is a new website that's been created through NC Fair Chance, that we can provide this website to folks, defendants who come before us, and point them to this website, and they can fill out information, and they can actually request from the North Carolina Pro Bono Resource Center a free review by an attorney who's offering their services for free, an analysis of their license and what they need to do to clear it up. That is an absolutely amazing, beautiful new tool that our state has, which we are all very excited in district court on being able to connect individuals with. Licensing piece, Judge Brown brought up in the Criminal Justice Resource Department. One other thing I do want to hit on, a short time here, is the new bail policy that Judge Brown mentioned. I showed you the pretrial release assessment. Within this bail policy, there are a few things that that our district, through a pretrial working team, which a number of folks in the community, elected officials, non-court officials, have been working together for a few years to reform our pretrial policies. And that came with a new bail policy that Judge Cave and Judge Bedore just signed earlier this week. It goes into effect on Monday, but it's also one that we've been following for the past year or so, even though it wasn't fully entered, because we wanted to be able to effectuate those the new tools even before anything was official. So one of the new things that we have tried to do is, I'll show you this as a district court judge, when folks are not showing up to court, we started utilizing a bench card. That is, if you click on that link that we provided on the initial page that shows the Orange County bail policy, at the bottom of the policy on Appendix F is the bench card that for months and months and months and months our district court judges used. And it is essentially a walkthrough for us to address non-appearances. So if we have a criminal court session and someone does not show up to court that day, we then have to address whether or not to continue the case and send them a letter or giving them a new court date, or to issue an order for arrest, and through an order for arrest, set different conditions. Our policy, our pretrial working team, our bench, our stakeholders in the judicial system here have worked really hard at changing things up. And one of the pieces that we've changed are for class 1, 2, 3 misdemeanors, non-DWI misdemeanors. And if it's an individual's first time missing, we will continue that case. We no longer issue orders for arrest. At least that's our policy. And you could see through here, I'm not going to go through these steps, but this is a tool that we utilize. And it helps us to really give us some guidelines as to what's important to us and what are we not criminalizing, what are we not punishing, especially in a pretrial setting. And the statistics that the school government ran on our new policy, they've been studying all of our forms that all 5 of us judges have been putting forth. They gave us some statistics that I'm going to read off. I don't have it to share here. But what Jesse Smith and the team said on their evaluation, it says that we found that the reform was working as intended in 100% of these cases. And what that meant was we were resetting cases when they were required under our policy to be reset. Specifically, in all 128 of the target cases where the non-appearance was not excused and there was no prior missed court date, judges responded to the non-appearance by simply rescheduling the court date, not issuing an order for arrest. That's I found it to be very, it felt good to hear that statistic, because I know we were working so hard. Some of the hardest things that we do in district court are addressing non-appearances and pretrial and first appearances, and ensuring folks the safety of the community and victims, alleged victims, but also ensuring that folks are not put into custody when they don't need to be there. And the pieces and the charges that we've identified to keep folks out of custody pretrial, our bench is working hard to comply with those policies. There are lots of things that we can go on. Those are 3 things that we wanted to identify were the policy, the NC Fair Chance Act, and the Criminal Justice Resource Department. One thing I'll also hit on, I'll go back to Judge Brown in a second. Judge Brown is also, Judge Brown has served in so many different capacities, and she's such in our community, and she is, I'll just brag about her. I remember the first time I met her, she'd already known about me because my father was her and Jonathan's mailman for years. So I already knew about her, and I met Judge Brown before I could even vote for her a long time ago. My father introduced her at a polling place where she was running for town council. And she has always been engaged with the community. And I've learned from elected officials like her the importance of connecting within the community. The street outreach harm reduction team that the SORAD team that town manager Jones mentioned, it's such an important tool for us in linking individuals who come before us on first appearances with certain resources. If the pretrial team has identified this is someone who's struggling with housing, they can connect, the team can connect folks with SORAD, with ISC. If there are substance abuse issues, you can connect them with Freedom House, other inpatient facilities, as well to do some detox if need be. But I'll give you a really good example, just one quick example of how when things work well. I had somebody come before, or not come before me, a case that was before me about 2 months ago. Misdemeanor larceny charged. But the larceny had to do with, when I read the charge out, when I was reviewing it because they were not in court, it was diapers, it was, I think it was formula, and it was other small items at a downtown establishment in Chapel Hill. And there was no address, there was no return address for this person. It literally said on the charging document, the streets, when there's not an address that is sometimes utilized. The normal course would be in that situation for that individual would be to issue an order for arrest because they had already missed court once before. It didn't feel right. So what we did was we held that case. I communicated with the street outreach and harm reduction team, and they said, we're already working with that individual in our treatment courts already. If we can push that case onto there, we'll be in touch with him. We know how to find him. He generally stays in this area of town. We'll go find him. We'll make sure he's in court. And it all worked. We addressed it. We put it on that court date. And as I remember, he showed up to that because he was already in touch. That's a very small example, but when you talk about these community pieces, as we do have to work together, it really is important for us that we're working with our different municipalities, our county commissioners, our law enforcement, and other elected leaders, because we are all in this together in the way that we are addressing all the different needs of our community members. Again, I can go on forever, but Judge Brown, please address anything I forgot. Judge Brown and I were in a car for 16 and 12 hours over a training where we drove back and forth. The first 6 hours we didn't listen to any music, we just talked. So Judge Brown and I are really tight. And I know she'll fill in anything I'm missing, but if you want to fill in anything, Judge Brown, or go off on anything else, go for it.
No. I'm just gonna go to questions, and Judge Roper is on the call, so I'm letting everybody know. So 6 out of 7 of our judges in our district, because we're a 2-county district, Orange and Chatham counties. I would want to say, having done juvenile this last 6 months, whatever we do, we need to do more to support families and children. And we do it best by supporting the families. And any sort of programs or activities that we can support and implement should be done. And so I'm going to just stop there. And if anybody has any questions for us, or go to the general questions for everybody.
Yes, that's what we're going to do. I knew we would run out of time because we had so much great information to share today. I want to thank all of our presenters, especially our judges who are rounding us out at the end here. But now is the time to ask questions. And so if you have a specific question for any of our panelists that you either addressed in the chat or just want to address right away, please feel free to use the hand raise feature right now. And I'm just going to start us off very quickly with a question for Dr. Hamlett, which is, as president of the NAACP, I hear from a lot of different constituents in our community. Most recently, I've been hearing from a lot of CHCCS personnel. And so I want to just ask you, what what are we doing now to start to address the disparate experiences that our Black staff are having in our school district? I've heard from everywhere from teaching assistants and school nurses and other personnel who are just having really hard times, mostly with their managers and with the people who are supervising them. And many of them feel that it is because of their race. So I'd love to hear what the district is doing to address some of those concerns.
Sure, and it'll probably be a rather short answer, other than to say that, of course, our door is always open if there are employees who are willing to have those conversations with us. And when I say us, I mean our Chief Human Resources Officer and myself. We've done a lot of work in trying to regain the trust of our employees. Coming in this time last year, I noticed that there was certainly some distrust, not just between school and district leadership, but also just employees in general. And so my door is always open. Ms. Newkirk's door is always open. And then the other thing that I will add is a few months ago, I established a BIPOC leadership group, and it was actually specifically for women of color. And so we had one session where we had like a listening circle and, really just trying to connect with one another and talk about some of our common experiences in the workplace. So that's something that we plan to expand upon as well.
Great, thank you so much. Do we have questions from other folks? Please use the raise hand feature. One question we have in the chat is, can someone give an update about what's happening with discussions in Carrboro and Chapel Hill concerning reparations? Is there anyone who can provide any information on that particular topic? Mayor Stiles?
I can try to just offer a very brief answer from the Carrboro side of things. And that, as you may have heard Manager White mention, that the town council recently stood up a new advisory board, which we're calling our Racial Equity Commission. That came out of a resolution the council adopted a few months before that addressed the topic of reparations in general, and looked forward to this commission advising us and working with the community on developing recommendations around how we support economic development, economic mobility for Black folks in the community, and addressing sort of his legacy of segregation here in our region. So we have that Racial Equity Commission working on that issue now. Hope that people will get involved in that, and please talk to both Councilmember Barbara Foushee and Councilmember Randy Haven O'Donnell, both of whom are here today, and they are the council liaisons to that commission.
Thank you so much, Mayor. Another question we had in the chat was regarding support for our unhoused community. And given the recent tragedy we had here in Chapel Hill just a couple of weeks ago, that's an important question right now. Can some of our leaders speak to what we are doing to better assist our unhoused members of our community? And especially in that response, can you tell us how we as members of the branch can be involved in supporting those efforts and bolstering them? Not to put you on the spot, but Manager Wright, I think you might be the best person to answer that question right now, unless one of our council members want to provide some input.
Just note, the town does provide support to nonprofits and programs that are working in the homelessness area. And so we certainly support the efforts through that initiative. During this past storm, for example, our Community and Housing Service Director was directly involved in working with those agencies to make sure that we could find some temporary housing for individuals who may have been in the cold. So we do all we can through funding and through support through those agencies to try to support our homeless community.
Thank you. I know we have several council members on our call today. Are there any who would like to provide any additional information from the Chapel Hill side? I see Commissioner Bedford has her hand raised. I'll let you go ahead and share something. And then I saw Mayor Stiles' hand up also.
Yes. Councilwoman Barbara Foushee and I are the newly elected chair and vice chair of the Partnership to End Homelessness. And we will be meeting next Thursday. And in just a preparatory review we did Thursday night, realize that of people who need permanent housing, who are homeless, we're serving about, well, I guess it was 40 to 80, which is about half the need. So we have tremendous need. And that's just for homelessness, to make it brief in one time. So I think that there are many ways that branch members can help. And that is when our budgets, when we have those budget hearings, or in the meantime, if you want to send emails, and that is to encourage additional funding for, we have a gaps analysis, and maybe, I'd be glad to share that with the buzz, perhaps a link so that people could read that. We have a brand new group of individuals we've expanded the leadership team to get more people with lived experience, more of the nonprofits involved. But we need advocates. It takes more money. It takes, and of course, housing, finding landlords, paying that bonus for landlords, having that fund to, if there is damage, to cover it. There's a lot of work to even covering. One of the gaps is $5,000 to provide just a basic service at death. It ranges from there to $2 million. And right now we have CARES dollars. So the street outreach team is being funded a great deal through CARES money. But if that goes away from the federal offices, how are we going to step up at the county and municipal levels to continue that work? And so I won't spend more time, but you have two branch members who are very, very involved.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Bedford. I see Commissioner Green has her hand up as well. I'll give you the floor now.
Thank you, Donna. I raised my hand before James Eva kind of got wound up, but that's exactly what this branch and other residents can do, is to advocate. I remember that before the pandemic started, at that point I was the county's representative to the Homeless Commission, and Barbara Fishy was still there from Carrboro, and we and the other elected representatives were trying to. We understood that there were this gaps analysis that James Ed is talking about. It is a plan. If we could fund that plan that has been well developed by the professionals in our community, we can pretty much solve homelessness. That is, make it rare, one time, and short. There needs to be the political will in our community, among elected officials, to spend the money to invest in the resources that we know will do the job. So that's really what we need to do. Thanks, James Etta.
And thank you, Commissioner Green. We appreciate you adding that information. Councilwoman Miller-Fushi, I don't know if your hand is raised in your capacity as councilwoman or secretary, so you just jump right in and let me know. And we would love to hear from you.
Yeah, it took me a moment, Donna. I was just like, wait, I'm secretary. Which one am I? I forgot. I can speak to this. First, I just want to say thank you for really elevating and centering our unhoused community members who have passed away in the last 2 weeks. I work at the Interfaith Council for Social Service, and that is an organization who's on the front lines of the crisis that we're dealing with. And it's really important that we are connecting the issues as it pertains to housing with individuals facing homelessness. But I want to not focus on the individuals, because it's families. We really have to broaden the scope of when we're talking about who's homeless. We're talking about families. And so this is a connection with our education system as well. And so I know with the town of Chapel Hill, one of the things we're really doing, and just want to thank our manager, Maurice Jones, for coming today and really elevating the efforts that we have within the town and how we are really utilizing town-owned land to build affordable housing. That's really important. And last week, or the week before, 2 weeks ago now, I think, yes, we were able to, according to the Reimagining Safety Task Force recommendations that explicitly recommended that council expand and staff a 4th member to SORAD. That was very, very important. The Interfaith Council for Social Service is short-staffed right now, and the work that SORAD is doing is so vital in helping to help with the cold weather hotel mitigation, helping with COVID mitigation, as well as helping with cold weather mitigation efforts. And so the stuff that IFC can't do, SORAD is really stepping in and filling in those gaps. And so what the Orange County is doing and helping to fund SORAD fully, and the town of Chapel Hill being able to, you know, put some skin in the game there as well, and fund a 4th position for SORAD. These are all steps in helping our community members facing homelessness. But these are just Band-Aids. We really have to think about housing, but not just the buildings, but creating communities, an ecosystem within our communities that can truly address these crises so that we can tackle homelessness. So that's my 2 cents. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilwoman. We appreciate you. I know we have just a few minutes left. For housekeeping purposes, I want to say this. I will not stop anyone who is willing to stay and ask and or answer questions. I do recognize that we are hitting the 2-hour mark and that our presenters have been here, most of them with us for the full time. If you have to drop off, we totally understand and appreciate that. But because this is a community town hall, if the community is willing to stay, I will let you stay up until the last question is asked. If the person your question is addressed to is not here when it's time, when you have the floor, I will write it down. I will make sure we get those out in writing, and then we will get that back to the community. Our branch treasurer, Dr. Debbie Stroman, is reviewing the chat for me and helping me to make sure there are questions that I may have missed that we can address. So Debbie, if you want to jump in with a question that I have not yet addressed, please let us know what those were.
Sure. Thank you, Madam President. Thinking about health being the most important system, the most important institution. And the question was asked by Elizabeth Evans, and I think there was an answer in the chat box, but it'd be great if anyone else wants to speak to it, because health, we're talking about our air. So can someone please speak to the coal plant with UNC? Thank you, Elizabeth, for your question. She's asking, what else are we going to do? How are we going to establish a timeline or a date for closing?
Looks like Commissioner Richards has a comment on that, and I'm going to bring you in. Thank you.
Hi, thanks. Yeah, there's a very active advocacy called No Coal UNC that has been working in this arena for quite a while. And the ownership really is UNC. I think the towns can advocate, and the community can advocate and really push for some specificity from the university. There had been a commitment. That time frame came and went without them living up to the commitment that had been made. And so I think there is real opportunity for this to become a community issue. But the onus in terms of ultimately is with the university. I think many members of the branch remember us coming to branch with a lawsuit that had been filed that was not successful. So I think it really is going to take the community coming together to advocate for some specifics from the university.
Thank you, Commissioner Richards. Debbie, do we have another question?
I think our town managers, in particular, Maurice Jones, has done a wonderful job of responding to a number of questions that were posed in the chat. But if he's still on, if he wants to speak to any of those, or Richard White, or do you want to share any more in terms of your responses?
He had to, Manager Jones did have to depart. Manager White, I will give you the floor back.
Yes, no, I've tried to read through and catch the ones I thought that were relevant to Carrboro. If I've missed any, please feel free to point those out, but I try to respond to the few I saw, I think, in the chat.
Thank you. I see we have, I know we have Commissioner Richards again, and then Mayor Stiles, so I will pop back to the two of you, and then I'll wrap us up if there are no other particular questions that have not been addressed as of yet.
So my one question, I put it in the chat, but I didn't see an answer, and that was really to Superintendent Hamlett. I know the school board approved salary increases for instructional staff last Thursday, but non-instructional staff, all the TAs, et cetera, were not a part of that. And I've gotten some feedback just in the last day or so about folks who worked and not had an increase in 10, 11 years. And so what is the plan to at least review and go forward with salary reviews for those important support staff who really do a lot of the work to keep our district going?
Yes, and I think there was another question in there from Wanda as well, a similar question. So some of the bonuses and increases that were approved the other night were not part of the annual budget development process. So we are still just starting that process. Some of those were based on the state approved budget and bonuses that were required from the state. So right now we have initiated a classified salary study. So that is for our non-instructional personnel. And we initiated that back in August. We anticipate having recommendations from that salary study at the end of this month. And the study will be a comprehensive salary study of the current structure and market competitiveness of our classified staff. So with those recommendations, it will be specific to employee groups like bus drivers, secretaries and our bookkeepers, other non-instructional staff. And so there may be some salary adjustments that come out of that in the budget development process. And then we'll work with our board on the implementation plan and making sure that we're able to sustain. The other thing that I just wanted to add is also that our after 1 year, all of our classified staff also receive a 5.5% supplement. So we are trying to make sure that we're doing our due diligence to make sure that our classified staff are receiving appropriate pay based on cost of living, but also wanted to initiate that study to ensure that, like I said, that market analysis is done as well.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hamlett. One question I know we missed in the chat was from our member, Miriam Thompson, and she asked, how is the county and municipal leadership addressing the savage cuts and tax giveaways to the wealthiest by our state's legislature that impacts our local and county budgets? If anyone has a response to that. I know that's a tough one. Any input on that question? Okay, we will put that one in writing and try to get that back and try to get an answer for you, Miriam. Before I go to you, Mayor Stiles, if Dr. Cox is still with us, I just wanted to ask quickly, I know there has been controversy about KN95 masks and how we support staff and faculty and students on campus. I'm thinking about our most vulnerable staff, which are usually our housekeeping and facility staff. Is there any university-wide approach to making sure that they have all of the necessary PPE to keep them safe at this time?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Donna. So there has been administrative discussion at the chancellor and provost level and all of the school deans about providing some masks, especially for our facilities staff who are there to help, literally run the building, keep the campus running. And so we're looking at providing those free to those members, and then also looking at providing some masks for our students also. because we know that they are also in very close contact and then in contact with the rest of the faculty and staff. So that discussion just took place on Thursday. So I think we're probably going to be moving forward with that.
Great, thank you so much for that response. Mayor Stiles, back to you. Oh,
Yeah,
now I
thank
feel
you,
like
Donna. I just wanted to offer a very brief response to the earlier question about the coal plant on campus in terms of what's happening locally. People may remember that I think it was late spring or summer, the town of Carrboro joined or wrote a letter to the North Carolina Division of Environmental Quality in opposition to the permit renewal for that plant. That permit was renewed. And so we later joined a petition with the Center for Biological Diversity to object to that permit renewal when it went up to the administrator of the EPA. I think it probably was upheld at that level, but I think the bigger issue here is the question of where the power is in terms of who's making these decisions for the campus about the future of the coal plant. And unfortunately, as with many decisions on campus these days, it is not the people who we have a lot of direct access to or are listening to our concerns. So I think that's one thing to keep. I think that continuing to keep the pressure on at the local level is still really important. And Commissioner Richards noted this really great advocacy work that's going on here locally. But also we need to change the state legislature. And this is sort of an answer to a lot of our problems, I think, that it's worth always talking about and remembering to get out to vote this year. So thanks again for the great program.
Thank you. And so with that, I'm going to just give some closing remarks. Again, if you have questions that did not get addressed, please feel free to drop those in the chat. You're also welcome to shoot an email to me directly or to our email at info@chcnaacp.com. Secretary Miller-Foushee, if you would drop that in the chat so folks can have easy access to our contact information. I want to just wrap us up with a few things. I'm glad that we had the opportunity to start our year by hearing from some of our administrators and community leaders. I want to acknowledge the fact that many of the folks you heard from today are members of our branch and are active members of our branch. And for those who are not yet members of our branch, I invite you now on this recorded forum to become members of the branch very soon. What I also want to highlight is that many of the folks who you heard from and or the names that you heard dropped today are the same names that we hear on a regular basis. We heard how many times today Councilwoman Foushee, Barbara Foushee, is working on that. She's on that committee. She's leading that particular stance. We have so many of our branch members today, Councilwoman Miller-Foushee, Commissioner Richards, Commissioner Bedford, and I could go on, who are leading the efforts not only here in our branch, but in our community, in our local government, on some of our local nonprofits. I hear the same names all day when I call up folks to address the issues in our community, when I hear about who is leading the efforts. These folks are tired, y'all, and I'm going to add myself to that list. We are exhausted because we hang up this call today. We're going to have a meeting after the meeting, and then we're going to jump on 3 more calls about particular issues that we are addressing in our community. We need help. We are not the only people in this town. We know we live in a town and not a city, whether we're in Carrboro or Chapel Hill, but there are more hands to do this work, and I call on you all to tap your neighbors, to tap your family members and friends and ask them to get in on the work. As you make that call, as you make that tap on the shoulder, please remind them of the folks who are in need of advocacy and support and not just words. We are good at words in this town. We live in a university community. Many of us have bachelor's degrees at minimum, all the way up to terminal degrees. And so words we can do very well. But what I caution us to do is take some time out of just saying and get to the doing. We have so many people in our community who are vulnerable, who are tired of being told that it's on the way, that someone's working on that. We live in one of the richest counties in our state, and yet we have people who have died on our streets because they are unhoused. It is unacceptable. We have work to do, y'all, and we can't do it with the 7 or 10 people whose names you hear in every single room, whether it's the classroom or the church room or the Zoom room that we are in here today. I encourage us all to really not only reflect intellectually on what we heard today, but to get into it spiritually and emotionally and think about the people who are really not benefiting from the services that we are offering. It is more than just to say we have a policy for that. We have a fund for that. We have work to do, and we have to be on the ground in our community to do it. We cannot do it sitting on this Zoom screen. We have to be outside in the neighborhoods. We have to make sure that there are folks who know who we are. And I'll be honest with you, there have been some instances over the past 6 months in which the NAACP was not called. And that lets me know there are folks in our community who either don't know who we are, don't know what we do, or at worst, don't trust us to get it done. That means we all have so much work left to do. I want to just remind us that we have much to do as it pertains to economic development. We've seen a couple of new Black-owned businesses pop up in our community recently, but we need way more of those. We've seen leaders on this call today, and I'm so glad that many of them have been Black or African-American leaders, but we still have work to do in diversifying our town and our leadership. We've heard from our judges, we've heard from so many in our judiciary who have told us that there are members of our community who have made mistakes, and we cannot cast them aside. We have work to do. And I want to thank everyone who is here who had not been invited and did not need to be invited to be here. I want to be clear in that, there are times when we have these meetings, whether it's a town hall or a regular branch meeting, and I see the same folks on the call. But when I see our leaders, I saw our judges here. I think Judge Pendergrass said 6 out of the 7 were here. I saw many of our county commissioners here who were not invited to speak on this particular time, but we'll be getting to you all. But I saw our school administrators. I saw folks from UNC Chapel Hill, and I want to say thank you for being here without having to be invited, for understanding and recognizing that this is not a political stance for you to show up for the media, but that you are here because you wanted to hear and be a part of the solutions for our community. So I thank you for that. As I wrap up and as I close, I want to let you know that we will follow up this town hall with officials from our county level so that we can talk not only at Chapel Hill and Carrboro, but get to the county level concerns as well, and that there will be work to be done. And so we will be taking the notes from today's session, going ahead and making sure that we come up with some action items for our community. But as we do that, I cannot enforce enough that I cannot fix all these problems once we write them all down. As the president of the NAACP, as a person who works a full-time job and is in school, I will not run myself ragged trying to fix this community without the support of the community. And so I'm telling y'all now, it is the time. Renew your branch membership, jump on a committee, let me know, send an email and let us know. All you need to let us know is how many hours you can give us in a week and what your skill set is. We will put you to work, I promise. I thank you all for staying with us. I know we are 13 minutes past our due time. And if you've been here with us for the full 2 hours, I thank you for your commitment. I promise you that this will not be the end. We have a lot of work to do. Again, thank you so much to our presenters, Dr. Hamlett, Dr. Cox, Judge Pendergrass, Judge Brown, Managers White and Manager Jones, as well as Dr. Steele. We thank you all for your participation. This recording, like I said, will be available on our branch's YouTube, so you can refer back to it. We will save the chat and grab your questions and comments, and then we will get to work. So thank you. We'll see you on February 5th at the beginning of Black History Month for our branch meeting. Thank you all. Have a great weekend. Stay warm out there, and please, please keep your community members and neighbors in mind.